All right, so I did a lot of things to make a living. I sold office supplies over the phone, and I wrote pornographic greeting cards for Chippendales. My favorite one was Napoleon, picture of Napoleon, and it said, great leaders of the world have always had large penises. And you don't put the card as it, so don't give up your day job. Anyway, so I did all those different things, and I needed to make some extra money, and I wanted some showbiz experience. I got a contestantship. I was a contestant at Win, Lose, or Draw, which is a charades thing. Pictionary is what it is. And I'm on the show with Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise. And during the commercial break, Burt says to me, if I can call him Burt, Burt says to me, you're not a used car salesman, are you? Which is what I had said on the form. You can't say you're in showbiz. So I said, no. And he said, you're a comedian, aren't you? And I went, yeah, I guess I am. And here's where I made my mistake. I said, you know what, Burt? There's a photo of you at the Comedy Store I've been looking at for years with Robin Williams and Richard Pryor on stage. He says, yeah, I remember that night. And what it was that Burt was in the audience, went up on stage, Robin translated a joke that Burt said into sign language, and Pryor did it into jive ghetto talk. And I wish I was there. It was one of the Comedy Store nights. I wish I was there. And I said, you know what? Richard Pryor's working out at the Comedy Store tonight. Why don't you come down and hang out? And he said, no, I can't. But say hi for Richard for me. Okay, wow, this is cool. So I finish, we go back from commercial break, I do the gay contestant thing. That night at the Comedy Store, I go down there. Pryor's on stage, it's about 11:30 at night. There's a little enclave of comics that hang out with Pryor. They write for him, they hang out with him, they do drugs. I don't know, what am I saying? Maybe, possibly, probably, definitely true. So I wanted to sort of head off those guys, you know, and talk to Pryor. So Pryor gets off stage, and then I sort of like wheedle my way around again. We're walking down these steps, and I said, hey, Richard, how you doing? He goes, yeah, how you doing? And I go, you remember me? He goes, yeah, you're a very funny guy. Thank you very much, Richard. Anyway, listen, I did this game show today with Burt Reynolds. Anyway, so it's produced by Burt Reynolds, Burt Convy. Anyway, so I was like, anyway, in the end, Burt wanted me to say hi. So hi from Burt Reynolds. Without looking at me, Richard Pryor said, yeah, tell Burt to suck my dick. Tell him to suck my dick twice. And I vowed, never would I ever let a celebrity embarrass me again. Or so I thought leading up to that. All right, so before I got to the Comedy Store, there was before I got there, there was a strike. And here's the thing. A lot of comics here know about this. Most of you guys don't. Here's what happened. Mitzi wasn't paying any of the comics, and the comics went on strike. She felt it was a showcase for them to launch their careers, and indeed it had for the lucky few. Jimmy J.J. Walker at the time, and a few other people. Indeed, it was a launch to their careers. But comics had to live, and they need, you know, you had to be up late, you had to pay for your drugs. Again, I mentioned drugs, but that's the case. And they needed, you know, to get paid for their self-esteem. And Mitzi was raking it in. What started out as a cash business inside a brandy glass was now turning into charge cards and reservations and $12 drinks. So the comics went on strike, led by David Letterman. Anybody correct me if I'm wrong later about this? Well, that would exclude the audience might want to know that. All right, in this particular little segment here. Meanwhile, Mitzi's arch nemesis, Bud Friedman, who had a successful improv club in New York, opened up a club in LA, and he wasn't paying the comics either, but he saw the comics on strike, so Bud pulled out a $5 bill and said, come on over here, comics, and work. And here's how the legend went. The legend went that if you worked for Bud, you were banned for life from the Comedy Store. And if you crossed the picket line and worked for Mitzi, apparently, I don't know if this is true, I have no way of backing it up, but apparently you might have found it hard to get on Letterman later on, because he was the leader, or one of the leaders of the strike. Strike was settled, the comics got paid, Mitzi didn't pay some of them, they were called paid regulars or non-paid regulars, and so I was a paid regular, and later became a non-paid regular, which I'll explain. But the thing is, you know, when I became a non-paid regular, you got to ask yourself how humiliating it is to lose your job to get fired, but how even most humiliating it is when they say you can keep your job, but we're just not going to pay you. There was two more things about that era. Mitzi was cleaning house. Every once in a while, you know, all comics from all over the country would sign up. They'd want to get into the Comedy Store. They'd audition, or there'd be new people. And we saw some great people coming through there. You know, Stephen Wright and Roseanne and Whoopi Goldberg and Bobcat, and the people just came through, and it was wonderful. You know, and it was impossible to get out of the Comedy Store if you weren't getting anywhere. You were stuck in this void, in this weird world. And through the help of my father, I was in England in '82 to visit my brother, who had a successful band there, and I played some comedy clubs. And I got a phone call that this agent, this big agent, had heard my tape and wanted to see me. So I flew back to LA, and I met with this agent who was at this big agency, and he came to see me. He handled Eddie Murphy and an unknown guy named Jim Carrey, and he was really a cool agent, knew all about comedy. Came to see me at the Comedy Store, but I was not funny. I lost it. I was just too serious. It was much like Tonight, and but for the wrong reason. And but we became friends, sort of like he was kind of like I was his hip pocket client. I could call him up, and he wouldn't be annoyed. He'd make a phone call, and then he'd hang up and roll his eyes. But he was a good guy. And when Mitzi was cleaning house, this agent, was friends with Bud. So I thought, well, hey, wait a minute. I wanted to play the Improv more than the Comedy Store. Why don't I go? And you know, the thing is, if you played the Improv and you were a Comedy Store regular, Mitzi would fire you. In fact, I was answering phones for her and being her doorman for 2 months, and I had inside knowledge of that. So I got an audition at the Improv for Bud. It was way too early, and I had a horrible set, and I was nervous, and I felt like I was leaving Mitzi for Bud, like I was betraying my mother to live with my father. It was all this weird kind of internal shit that I hadn't worked out. And besides that, I was just crap and unfunny. I think that had a lot to do with it. I mean, all the psycho-bibble. So anyway, I had a terrible set. Now I was panicking. For the next 2 weeks, I had to perform. I had to be a regular at the Improv. I had to get back there because I had already jumped ship at the store. And I was calling this agent all the time. He said, I'll get you another audition, I'll get you another audition. Then one night, I got into a big fight with my dad. And I was upset. He was upset. I left, and I went down to the Improv to have a drink. And normally, they have this little bar area, you go in, you have a drink. But this time, I wasn't allowed in, and I couldn't figure it out. I was never not allowed in any comedy club or anywhere. And I went in, and I wasn't allowed in. They wouldn't tell me why. And then I saw the agent over there talking to Bud, and I went, aha, I see. I get it. They don't want me to approach them and say, come on, guys, get me another audition here. So instead, I drove home to Hollywood, and I thought, okay. And I'm pulling into my parking lot, and just then I thought, hey, why not turn this whole thing around with one swift stunt? You know, it's kind of like when you're struggling to make it in Hollywood, you have like this little camera over your head that thinks that you're filming your entire life as it's happening. And you're always like at the last, just right before the denouement, right at the beginning of the third act, you think, you know, it's all going to turn the corner. So I went back to the Improv, and I stood outside with my guitar, and I just sang as loud as I could. And I just sang comedy songs or whatever, and I thought, aha, because I really loved Andy Kaufman, and Andy Kaufman used to play there, and so they see that I'm a performance artist, not just a comedian, and ha ha ha, la 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 la, they're going to love me, I'm great, and it's fantastic, and I can't wait to see the results, and they banned me from the Improv for life. So, there I was. I couldn't play the Comedy Store. I couldn't play the Improv. I didn't want to leave LA. I was down. It was like, you know, hey, what am I going to do? I wanted to be a comedian so badly. I tried too hard. So, one night I went up on stage at the Comedy Store, and I announced to the audience that I was leaving showbiz, that I was quitting, that it would be my last show, and that I was totally serious. And I had the most incredible feeling. I had, are we okay over there? Biff, we all right? Okay, Biff? You okay, Biff?
No, I just got a page.
You got a what?
I just got a page.
All right. All right, now. No, that's okay. That's all right. Drug delivery business, ladies and gentlemen, is not what it used to be. Sorry. Is it Betty Page? Thanks, Biff. Good night. Lock the door. Got a page. Hey, I got a fucking chapter, huh? Anyway, he has issues. Well, he has a subscription. Alright, so I said, hey, I didn't want to be a failure. I thought I was always misunderstood. I think that was my problem. I knew a lot of comedians. We were in the same boat. We felt misunderstood, but I couldn't work the store of the Improv. And you're not a comedian at that level if you couldn't work the store of the Improv. There wasn't the fake gallery back then. There was just the real comedy store. And so I went up on stage and I announced to the audience that I was quitting. I said, this is my last show. I'm done. I've had it. And I wasn't angry. I was just kind of like getting it off my chest. They didn't know me. I just was saying it. My last show. And something magical happened. Because for the first time, I had this pressure off my back. I didn't have to be funny anymore. It was always a fear that Mitzi was going to walk in the room and see you have a duff set, a bad set, and then you'd be off. Instead, I didn't care. And because I didn't care, I was funny because I was having fun. And at the end of it, I said to the audience, no, you guys are so great. It's okay. And I didn't even plan this. I said, I'm going to come back tomorrow night and do another farewell performance if that's okay with you. And they applauded and they were relieved that I did. And the next night I came back again for another farewell performance. And the following night, and pretty soon I had what this agent said I never had, which was, he said to me, you're funny that you don't have an act. Now I have an act. Every show's my last. So America was going through the 12-step fever, as I call it, at the time, which everybody was coming out with addictions. They're addicted to alcohol, cocaine. People were addicted to everything, to chocolate, to shopping, to going on Oprah and talking about addictions, to people addicted to addictions. It was amazing. So I thought, well, why not? I've read about getting high on laughter. I read Norman Cousins' Anatomy of an Illness. I thought, why not? I get high on the laughter. I do. There's a physiological and spiritual energy, the change that happens when you're on stage. I don't know, maybe it's the light in your eyes, maybe it's chemical, maybe it's hallucinatory, maybe it's spiritual, I don't know. But when you're on stage, any comedic performer, any performer at all will tell you that that's true. And I knew comics that were being hypocritical. They were going on stage and telling jokes about, hey, you got drunk last night, I did coke. And then meanwhile, on the weekends, they're in rehab. They're being hypocritical, and I thought that was weird. And there was a lot of drug use and a lot of A-type behavior at the Comedy Store, and people were selling drinks, and they're, you know. And there was a comedian that Mitzi told one day he wasn't funny and he couldn't work the Comedy Store. So Steve Lebekin was a friend of Richard Lewis, and Mitzi said, you're not funny. He went next door to the Continental Hidehouse, took an elevator to the top, jumped off, and landed and killed himself. And my joke was always, did Mitzi see it? Because she has to see your act. So my cousin Larry killed himself because he didn't think anyone didn't love him, I think. And Lebekin killed himself because Mitzi didn't think he was funny, and I ask you to consider, is there any difference? So I got into this thing about addictions, and I put up the paradigm, the following paradigm, that I, the comedian, am the addict. I'm addicted to the laughter, and the audience is the codependent. The audience needs to feed my addiction, is enabling me. The club owners are the pushers. They hold that addiction. They hold what I need, my drug. And I interviewed comedians, and I wrote a book comparing their highs to real drugs like alcohol and cocaine. And not that I drink, and I've done my share of cocaine, and comparing it to stage high. And all the answers were similar. And I moved to New York, and I wrote a book, and I got a literary agent, and I never sold the book, but it's called Confessions of a Showbiz Junkie. And soon, now, I'm like, touring America, I'm not, I'm playing fucking clubs, can you book me next week? But, I'm playing clubs in North America and whatever, but I'm doing farewell performances, every show's my last. And I go out and I tell the audience that I'm leaving showbiz, that's my last show. At the end of the show, I try to kill myself with a gun because I needed a big finish. And of course I say, I'm not going to kill myself tonight because you've been a great crowd. Then I point it to some heckler or something, and say, but I finish you off, sir, and the audience laughs. So now, 5,000 farewell performances, and 16 years later I moved to London, England. And I first played there. I visited my brother, I mentioned, and I played at the Comedy Store over there. No affiliation whatsoever. And it was fantastic. And I went back because my father, as he was dying, as his dying wish, he read in my book that I did really well in England, and he said, go to England. He died. And of course I said, what? So, anyway, I went to London, and it was fantastic. It was like Alice in the it was like Through the Looking Glass. Suddenly everything was colorful, and all the things that I was doing that was kind of pissing people off, making them angry over here, not understanding me, suddenly over there I'm witty and brilliant. Although I have to admit, one time I did a show at the Comedy Store in London, and this girl came up to me afterwards and said, you are brilliant, just brilliant. Then they all went and they had tea or drinks and whatever, and someone held up some tea and went, this tea is brilliant. And I thought, well, wait a minute. But I had a great time, and I was doing films, and I was doing reports to the BBC, and I was playing comedy clubs, and I was this crazy American who kills himself, and I had the front page of the tabloids.